The prison arc known as the Absolution drifted through the vacuum like a splinter of bone caught in a black throat. It orbited the edges of the Veil Nebula, a torn ribbon of violet and bruised gold gas that interfered with long-range scanners and swallowed distress signals whole. Inside, the silence was heavy, pressurized, and tasted of recycled oxygen and copper. The alarms were currently silent, but the emergency lights pulsed with a slow, rhythmic throb, imitating the heartbeat of a dying star. Deep within the bowels of Sector 0, the air was cold enough to frost breath on the interior of a helmet. Here, in the deepest isolation containment, the silence was not just an absence of noise, it was a weapon. Lara Vathalan drifted back to consciousness. It was not a gentle waking. It felt as though she were being dragged upward from the bottom of a freezing ocean. Her lungs burning, her mind filled with static. She gasped, but the sound was small, swallowed by the dampeners in the walls. She tried to move her hand to her face, but her wrist stopped short, jerking against a magnetic field. The restraint chains were not merely physical. They were thick, matte black coils that jacked directly into the neural ports at the base of her neck and along her spine. Every time she tensed a muscle with intent to strike or struggle, the chains sent a localized shock of paralytic voltage into her nervous system. It turned defiance into nausea. She hung suspended in the center of the cylindrical cell, held upright by the gravity tethers. Her vision cleared slowly. The stasis fog that had kept her under for the journey was receding, leaving her head pounding. Directly in front of her, the containment glass was reflective, backed by the darkness of the corridor beyond. She saw herself. She looked gaunt. Her skin, once iridescent with the faint natural luminescence of her people, was dull and gray. Her hair floated weightlessly around her face in tangled knots. She looked broken. Lyra stared at the reflection in the cracked visor of her containment suit. She forced her eyes to focus, to sharpen, refusing to let the dullness win. She moved her lips, testing them to see if they still belonged to her. "The exiled Starlight princess awoke in chains," she whispered. Her voice was raspy, unused for weeks. She repeated it, letting the bitterness coat her tongue. "The exiled Starlight princess awoke in chains." It sounded like the opening line of a tragedy written by a historian who hated her. It anchored her. It reminded her that she was still part of a story, even if that story was currently being written by her enemies. Outside the thick blast doors, the muffled sound of magnetic boots clanging against the deck plating broke the silence. Voices drifted through the audio filters, distorted but audible. "I am telling you, I do not want the shift on this block," a rough voice grumbled. "You know what she did to the garrison on Orax Prime. They say she boiled the blood in their veins just by looking at the sun." "That is grunt talk," a second voice replied, dismissive but tight with tension. "She is not a sorcerer. She is a bioweapon. The Coalition says she sold out 3 entire star systems to the Separatists, sold the coordinates, turned off the defense grids, and watched them burn. Traitor implies she had a side. She is just a monster." "I heard she eats radiation," the first guard persisted. "I heard if the containment field drops, she will go critical and take this whole ship with her." Lyra closed her eyes. The rumors were crude, exaggerated cartoons of the truth, designed to make the guards fear her too much to ever speak to her. If they feared her, they would not listen to her. And if they did not listen, she could never tell them why the war was actually happening. The blast door hissed open. The light from the corridor spilled in, harsh and white, blinding after the dim red pulse of the cell. 2 figures stepped in, followed by a third who moved with a different cadence. The first 2 were standard prison enforcement, bulky armor, faces hidden behind opaque visors. Stun batons magnetized to their hips. But the third man was different. He wore the uniform, but he wore it like it did not fit his skin. His helmet was tucked under his arm, revealing a face that was sharp-angled, pale, and etched with a kind of exhaustion that sleep could not fix. He had dark eyes that scanned the room not with fear, but with a calculated, weary precision. This was Jace Wren. He stopped 3 meters from the containment glass. He did not flinch when he looked at her. He did not check his weapon. He just looked, his jaw set in a line of discipline that held back a fracture line deep in his psyche. Jace Wren was a man who had spent 10 years in the Coalition infantry. He had earned medals for valor and had thrown them in the trash recycler 2 years ago. He had been reassigned to the prison detail after an incident on the border world of Callus 4, where he had refused an order to fire on a civilian transport that his commander claimed was carrying insurgents. He had been right. The transport was full of refugees, but being right was not a defense in a court-martial. It was only a mitigating factor that saved him from a firing squad and landed him here, babysitting the most dangerous woman in the galaxy. "Officer Wren," the comms earpiece buzzed. "Status?" "Subject is conscious," Jace said. His voice was flat, controlled. "Restraints are green. Vitals are stabilizing." Behind him, the heavy thud of footsteps announced the arrival of the man who owned this metal world. Director Kale Soar swept into the room. Soar was a man who looked like he had been manufactured in a boardroom. His uniform was impeccable, the fabric synthetic and expensive. He smelled of synthetic sandalwood and absolute authority. "Excellent," Soar said, smiling with his mouth but not his eyes. He stopped beside Jace, looking at Lyra like a curator inspecting a damaged painting. "Welcome to the Absolution, Officer Wren. I trust you have read the briefing." "I read it, sir," Jace said. "Then you know the stakes," Soar said. He turned to Jace, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial volume that was still meant to be overheard. "You are not here to judge truth. Wren, you are not here to wonder about the politics of the war or the validity of the treaties. You are here to prevent the truth from escaping. Do you understand?" "I am here to guard the prisoner," Jace corrected gently. Soar chuckled, a dry sound like paper rubbing together. "Same thing. She is a symbol, Wren. To her people, she is a fallen angel. To ours, she is the devil. Our job is to make sure she remains exactly what the Coalition needs her to be. A warning." Soar clapped his hands, a sharp report that signaled the crew waiting in the hallway. "Bring in the verification team. We need the arrival footage for the evening broadcast." Jace watched as a team of 3 technicians hurried in. They were not medical staff. They were a camera crew. One technician set up a floating hollow recorder, positioning it to catch the most menacing angle of Lyra's silhouette against the dark cell. Another technician approached the control console and adjusted the lighting inside the cell. He flooded the chamber with a harsh, cold blue light that made Lyra's pale skin look cadaverous, emphasizing the dark circles under her eyes and the heavy chains dragging down her arms. "Raise the voltage on the restraint collar," Soar ordered casually. "Just 5%. I want her to look engaged, dangerous." "Sir," Jace stepped forward, his brow furrowing. "The medical readout says her neural pathways are already stressed. Increasing the voltage is not necessary for containment." Soar turned to Jace, his expression mild. "It is necessary for the narrative, officer. The public needs to see that the monster is struggling. It justifies the budget." Soar nodded to the technician. The technician slid a fader up, inside the cell. Lyra's back arched, her jaw clamped shut, the muscles in her neck straining as the electric current spiked into her spine. It was not enough to kill, but it was enough to simulate the look of a rabid animal straining against a leash. She did not scream. She refused to scream. She held Jace's gaze through the glass, her eyes burning with a defiance that cut through the pain. Jace felt a cold pit open in his stomach. This was not security, this was theater. Cruelty performed for a lens. "Hold that," Soar directed the camera operator. "Get the close-up on the chains. Good. Now, cut the feed." The light inside the cell dropped back to the dim red. Lyra slumped forward, breathing hard, sweat beading on her forehead. "Perfect," Soar said, checking the holopad. "That will play well on the core worlds. Shows we are vigilant." He turned to leave. "Ren, you have the first watch. Do not speak to her. Do not let her speak to you. She has a way of twisting words." Soar and the camera crew departed, leaving Jace alone in the silence with the other two guards stationed at the far end of the hall. Jace turned back to the glass. Lyra had recovered her posture. She was watching him. A maintenance drone, a battered M unit with rusted chassis plates, trundled into the room, beeping cheerfully. It was following a pre-programmed cleaning route that had clearly not been updated for the high-security protocols. It bumped into the containment glass, retracted a cleaning buffer, and scanned the barcode etched into the metal frame of Lyra's cell. "Greetings," the drone's synthesized voice chirped, loud and jarring in the tense atmosphere. "Scanning. Subject identified. Welcome. Star Luxury VIP. Would you like a hot towel or a beverage service?" The absurdity of the moment hung in the air like smoke inside the cell. Lyra let out a sound. It was a laugh, but it was dry, bitter, and sharp as a knife. "Star Luxury VIP," she wheezed. "I would love a hot towel machine, perhaps one soaked in acid to dissolve these chains." "Error," the drone replied. "Acid is not on the beverage menu. Have a pleasant cycle." The drone beeped again and trundled away, oblivious to the fact that it had just addressed a prisoner of war as a vacationing dignitary. Jace felt the corner of his mouth twitch, an involuntary reaction to the dark irony. He quickly suppressed it, resetting his face to stone. He stepped closer to the console to check the readings, trying to look busy. "You found that amusing." Lyra's voice came through the intercom. It was not a question. Jace did not look up. "I am just checking the diagnostics." "You have a fracture in your discipline. Guard," she said. Her voice was smoother now, regaining some of its regal cadence despite the exhaustion. "I saw your face when your master ordered the voltage up. You did not like it." "He is the director. I follow orders," Jace said. His voice clipped. "Do you?" Lyra asked. She drifted closer to the glass, the chains clinking softly. "Is that why you are here? In the darkest hole of the universe? Men who follow orders blindly usually get promoted, not reassigned to prison duty on the edge of a nebula." Jace looked up then. He met her eyes. They were violet, with flecks of silver that seemed to catch the dying light of the emergency pulses. "I am here to do a job," Jace said. "And what is that job?" Lyra pressed. "To keep the monster in the box? Or to make sure the box is tight enough that no one hears the monster begging for a trial?" "You are a combatant," Jace said, reciting the script he had been given, though it tasted like ash in his mouth. "You orchestrated the fall of the Orax system. You are dangerous." "I am dangerous," Lyra agreed softly. "But not for the reasons you think. I am dangerous because I know who signed the checks that paid for the bombs on Orax. And it was not me." Jace stared at her. For a second, the mask slipped. He felt a resonance, a vibration of truth in her words that matched the frequency of his own doubts. But the training kicked in. He severed the connection, metaphorically and literally, He reached out and muted the intercom. "Quiet on the deck," Jace said to the empty room. Lyra watched him through the glass. She did not look angry. She looked patient, and that was far more unnerving. 2 hours later, the routine of the prison was interrupted by an anomaly. Jace was at the security station, monitoring the thermal feeds of the cell block. When the main airlock sensors triggered, a ship had docked, not a supply freighter and not a prisoner transport. It was a sleek, heavy-duty courier vessel with coalition diplomatic clearance codes. Minutes later, the elevator at the end of the corridor hissed open. Director Soar emerged, looking flustered, which was a state Jace had not thought possible for the man. Beside him walked a figure cloaked in a heavy gray travel coat, the hood pulled up to obscure their features. Jace snapped to attention. "At ease, Ren," Soar said, his voice tight. "Take a walk. 5 minutes. Check the perimeter seals." "Sir, protocol dictates the prisoner must be under constant visual." "I said take a walk. Officer," Soar snapped. The cloaked figure raised a hand, silencing Soar. "Peace, Director. The guard is doing his duty. He may stay at the station. We will speak here." The voice was synthesized, filtered through a vocal modulator, masking gender and species. The figure turned slightly, looking toward Lyra's cell. "She is secure?" the figure asked. "Completely," Soar said, wiping sweat from his upper lip. "The neural dampeners are at 90%. She can barely remember her own name, let alone access her abilities." "Good," the figure said. "The Council is concerned. The public narrative is holding, but there are whispers in the outer rim. Sympathizers. They believe she is a martyr." "We are handling the optics," Soar assured him. "Handling is not enough," the figure said, cold and sharp. "The transfer must happen ahead of schedule. We cannot risk a trial or a rescue. She needs to be moved to the black site in the Antares belt. Once she is there, nature can take its course. A tragic illness, a failure of the life support system. Clean." Jace stood rigid at the console, his eyes fixed on the screen but his ears straining. They were talking about execution, not justice, not containment, erasure. "When?" Soar asked. 3 cycles, the figure said. "Keep her alive until then. If she dies before we arrive, the consortium will be displeased. She is an asset until she is a corpse. Do not damage the merchandise further." The figure turned and walked back to the elevator, Soar trailing behind like a nervous puppy. The elevator doors closed, and the silence returned. Jace exhaled, a long, shuddering breath. He looked at the containment glass. Lyra was floating in her restraints, eyes closed, feigning sleep. Or maybe she had passed out. He sat down at the console. His hands hovered over the keys. He knew he should not do it. He knew it was the quickest way to end up in a cell of his own. But the envoy's words, the consortium, rang in his head. The war was supposed to be between the coalition of free systems and the alien separatists. The Aurelian Arms Consortium was just a contractor. Why were they giving orders? Jace pulled his personal datapad from his belt and connected it to the hardline port under the desk. He bypassed the standard security filter, a trick he had learned from a comms officer on the border, and dug into the prisoner manifest. Most of Lyra's file was blacked out. Redacted bars of ink covered her history, her crimes, and her medical data. But Jace dug deeper, looking for the metadata tags, the digital footprints left by the bureaucracy. He found a medical transfer file from the day of her capture. It was tagged classified eyes only. He cracked the encryption on the summary. It was a scan of her physiological state upon arrest. Subject: Lyra Vathalan. Status: critical. Injuries: consistent with torture. Note: Subject signed the abdication treaty and exile agreement under chemical duress. Toxicology report indicates high levels of Veritas 9 serum and neurotoxins. Addendum, planetary vote count for exile. Decree falsified. Algorithm detected duplication of signatures. Jace stared at the small screen. The text blurred. She hadn't been exiled by her people. She had been framed. The vote was fake. The treaty was coerced. The entire legal basis for her imprisonment and for the continuation of the war was a lie. He disconnected the pad and shoved it into his pocket, his heart hammering against his ribs. He looked up at the cell. Lyra was awake again. She was looking at him. She knew. Somehow. She knew that he had seen it. The lights in the corridor flickered. It was not the rhythmic pulse of the emergency system. It was a hard power cut. The overheads died completely, plunging the sector into total darkness for 3 seconds before the backup generators kicked in with a low groan. Alert, the automated system announced. Power fluctuation in Sector 0. Security seals resetting. Jace drew his weapon. His training took over. Power fluctuations in a high-security prison were never accidents. He scanned the corridor. Empty. But the control panel on his desk was flashing red. The lock on Lyra's cell, the physical magnetic lock, had been disengaged. "Ren!" Soar's voice crackled over the radio, distorted by static. "We have a system malfunction. Hold your post." Jace ignored the radio. He moved toward the cell. The glass door was sliding open, just an inch. From the shadows of the maintenance alcove near the cell, a shape moved. It was not a guard. It was a prisoner, a massive, hulking figure in orange drabs, likely a cleaner from the lower block who had been let loose. The prisoner held a jagged shard of metal, a piece of a railing filed down to a needle point. The prisoner did not look at Jace. He moved with a singular glazed-eye focus toward the opening in Lyra's cell. It was a setup. Jace realized it in a split second. The envoy had said keep her alive, but Soar wanted her to be a monster. Or maybe someone else wanted her dead right now to prevent the transfer. A prison riot assassination. A crazed inmate breaks in and kills the helpless princess. The guards were overwhelmed, tragic, unavoidable. The assassin squeezed through the gap in the glass door. Lyra looked up, her eyes widening. She could not move. The chains held her fast. Jace made a choice. He did not call for backup. He did not fire a warning shot. He sprinted. He hit the assassin just as the man raised the shiv. The impact drove them both into the metal wall of the cell with a bone-jarring crunch. Jace was smaller, but he was faster and he was sober. The assassin roared, swinging the metal spike wildly. It caught Jace on the shoulder, tearing through the fabric of his uniform and drawing blood, but Jace didn't stop. He drove his knee into the man's gut and slammed the butt of his pistol into the attacker's temple. The assassin crumbled, unconscious. Jace stood there, breathing heavy, blood dripping down his arm. He turned to look at Lyra. She was staring at him, her chest heaving. The assassin had been inches from her throat. "Why?" she whispered. Jace looked at the open door, then at the unconscious man who had been led into the sector, then up at the security camera that was conveniently panning away from the cell. "Because the lock didn't fail," Jace said, his voice low and dangerous. "Someone opened it." He looked at Lyra, and for the first time he didn't see a prisoner. He saw a target. "They are not trying to keep you in," Jace said, the realization settling over him like a shroud. "They are manufacturing a reason to kill you." The alarms finally began to blare, loud and screaming, echoing the chaos that had just begun. Jace holstered his weapon, but he didn't step back out of the cell. He stepped closer to her, placing himself between the princess and the door. The chaos in Sector Zero had settled into a vibrating tension, the kind that precedes a structural collapse. Jace Wren stood inside the containment cell, the heavy blast door sealed behind him. Ostensibly, he was there to inspect the damage caused by the assassin's shiv to the magnetic lock casing. In reality, he was committing treason with a pair of micro-pliers. Lyra Vathalin hovered in the center of the room, her feet inches from the floor, suspended by the gravity tethers. She watched him work on her collar, the heavy black metal of the restraint pressed against her jugular, humming with the dormant threat of the neural shock. "You are shaking," Lyra said. Her voice was low, cutting through the silence of the room. "I am fine," Jace muttered, his fingers working quickly inside the exposed access panel of the collar. "Not you," she corrected. "The tool. You are hesitating on the blue wire. If you cut the wrong one, the failsafe triggers and I become a vegetable. I would prefer you not hesitate." Jace paused. He looked up, meeting her gaze. Her violet eyes were clear, unblinking, studying him with a terrifying intelligence. "I am not cutting the wire," Jace said. "I am bridging the circuit. If I cut it, the central computer knows the collar is offline. If I bridge it, the system thinks you are still secured, but the kill switch signal will loop back on itself." "Clever," she noted, a faint, dry smile touching her lips. "For a jailer." "I am not your jailer right now," Jace said. He snapped the casing back shut. It clicked with a finality that echoed in the small space. "I am the guy trying to make sure the next staged accident does not blow your head off." He stepped back. The proximity to her was disorienting. Up close, she did not smell like a prisoner or a monster. She smelled like ozone and something ancient, like dust from a library that had burned down 1,000 years ago. "Why?" she asked. The humor vanished, replaced by a razor-sharp scrutiny. "You saw the file. You know the vote was faked. But knowing the truth and acting on it are different species of courage. You have a pension. Jace Wren, you have a life. Why throw it away for a stranger who might actually be the monster the news says she is?" "Because I am tired," Jace said honestly. He wiped a smear of grease from his thumb. "I am tired of being told that cruelty is necessary for peace. And I am tired of watching people die because it is convenient for a budget." Lyra studied him, tilting her head. "You are a bad liar. Guard, you are not doing this for abstract peace. You are doing it because you looked at me and realized I was afraid. And your programming is broken. You cannot ignore fear." "Maybe," Jace deflected, "or maybe I just hate paperwork. And you dying on my watch creates a lot of paperwork." "Humor," she said softly. "A defense mechanism. I use it too. It keeps the screaming inside." Before Jace could respond, the ship lurched. It was not a subtle shift. The deck plating groaned, and a deep, concussive thud reverberated through the hull. The lights in the cell flickered violently, then turned a bruised, angry crimson. The intercom crackled to life. But it was not a voice. It was the wail of a siren, the code for a general population riot. "Alert!" the automated voice droned. "Insurrection in Wing B. Fire suppression active. All personnel to containment stations. Lethal force authorized." Jace grabbed his datapad. The readout was a mess of red sectors. Wing B was on the other side of the ship, housing the general population, smugglers, pirates, and deserters. "A riot," Lyra said, looking at the flashing lights. "Convenient." "Too convenient," Jace agreed. He tapped into the internal command frequency. He heard Director Kale Soar's voice, calm and icy amidst the shouting of the other guards. "Isolate the server room," Soar was saying. "I purged the backup drives while the systems are down. Use the riot as cover for the data wipe. No witnesses in the archives. Jace looked at Lyra. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The riot was not an accident. It was a smokescreen. SOAR was deleting the evidence of the false treaty, the illegal labor, everything. And once the data was gone, the witnesses would be next. "We have to move," Jace said. He keyed the release on the gravity tethers. Lyra dropped to the floor, her legs buckled, weakened by weeks of suspension. But Jace caught her. His arm went around her waist, steadying her. She felt fragile, bird-boned, but the muscles in her back were rigid with tension. "Move where?" she asked, finding her footing but not pulling away. "The corridors will be full of kill squads." "Not the main corridors," Jace said. "The service tunnels, the guts of the ship. They do not have cameras down there because the director likes to pretend the ship runs on magic, not waste recycling." He led her to the back of the cell, to a maintenance panel he had noted earlier. He pried it open, revealing a dark, cramped shaft that smelled of hydraulic fluid and stale air. "After you, Your Highness," Jace said. "If I get tetanus," Lyra muttered as she climbed inside. "I am suing the Coalition." The service tunnels were a nightmare of industrial claustrophobia. They crawled through ducts that rattled with the vibrations of the ship's engines, descending deeper into the belly of the Absolution. Here, the neutral humanitarian facade of the prison dissolved completely. Through great openings in the floor, they looked down into the processing levels. They saw prisoners, not violent criminals, but political dissidents, being forced to load heavy munitions crates into unmarked shuttles. They saw medical bays that looked more like organ harvesting centers. "They are not just holding us," Lyra whispered, staring through a vent at a line of emaciated prisoners welding hull plates without eye protection. "They are using us. This is a labor camp." "It is a war economy," Jace said grimly. "Free labor keeps the ammunition cheap." They reached a junction near the Central Administrative Core. Jace checked his datapad. "The server room is 2 levels up, but the director mentioned an archive, a physical backup. It should be near the warden's private sector." "Lead on," Lyra said. She was moving better now, the adrenaline burning off the stasis fog. They dropped from a vent into a dimly lit storage room. It was filled with old-fashioned filing cabinets and stacks of physical data disks, the kind that couldn't be wiped remotely. This was the director's insurance policy. The ledger room. Jace moved to a desk, sweeping a flashlight over the papers. He picked up a leather-bound manifest. "Look at this," he said. Lyra moved to his side. The ledger detailed peacekeeping taxes levied on border worlds, protection money paid to the Coalition to prevent separatist attacks. But the payments were routed to shell companies owned by the Aurelian Arms Consortium and the Celestial Doctrine Order. "They are playing both sides," Jace said, his voice hollow. "The Consortium arms the separatists to attack a planet. The Coalition demands payment to defend it. The Celestial Doctrine blesses the war to keep the soldiers fighting. It is a closed loop." "And I broke the loop," Lyra said. She was staring at a schematic on the wall. It depicted a massive stellar array. "That is why I am here." Jace looked at the schematic. The Starlight relay, the news said it was a renewable energy network, a gift to the galaxy. "It is a lens," Lyra said. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with a terrible, suppressed rage. "My people, the Starlit, we resonate with stellar energy. We can shape it." The relay was designed to take that resonance and amplify it. They told the public it would broadcast power to every world. Free energy. She traced the drawing with a trembling finger. But the calibration was wrong. I saw the true blueprints. It does not broadcast power. It focuses it, like a magnifying glass under a sun. They wanted me to activate it, to target the separatist homeworlds. Jace stared at the diagram. It is a Death Star. It is a genocide machine, Lyra corrected. Surgical peace, they called it. Burn the enemy cities to ash from light years away, and call it divine intervention. I refuse to sing the activation hymn. I refuse to let my biology be the key that turned the galaxy into a graveyard. She looked at Jace. That is why they call me a traitor. Because I would not kill 1 billion people to save a treaty. The sound of boots marching in the corridor outside froze them. Search the room, a voice barked. The power surge unlocked the mag seals. Jace grabbed Lyra's arm. Hide. He pulled her toward a narrow maintenance crawl space behind a stack of server towers. They squeezed inside just as the door to the ledger room kicked open. The space was impossibly small. They were pressed chest to chest, the darkness absolute except for the slivers of light cutting through the server racks. Jace could feel Lyra's heart hammering against his own ribs. Her breath hitched, shallow and fast. The soldiers were tearing the room apart, overthrowing desks, smashing drives. He is not here, a soldier shouted. Check the vents. In the dark, Lyra's composure cracked. A tremor ran through her body, a violent shudder of trauma. She had been hunted for months. She had been chained, displayed, and tortured. The closeness of the boots, the shouting, it was too much. She started to gasp, a panic attack seizing her lungs. Jace did not think. He reached out and took her face in his hands. His palms were rough, calloused, but his touch was gentle. Look at me, he mouthed in the dark. He could not speak, but he willed her to hear him. Lyra's eyes locked onto his. They were wide, terrified, searching for an anchor. Jace slid his hands down to hers, interlacing their fingers. He squeezed, a rhythmic pressure. 1, 2, 3. I am here. I have you. Lyra squeezed back, her breathing slowed. She leaned her forehead against his chest, hiding her face in his uniform. The smell of him, sweat, gun oil, and something fiercely warm filled her senses, blocking out the cold sterility of the prison. For a moment, the war did not exist. There was only the heat of their bodies in the dark, the shared pulse of survival. Jace looked down at the top of her head. He felt a fierce, protective surge that terrified him more than the soldiers outside. He wanted to wrap himself around her, to become a wall that nothing could break. She looked up. Her face was inches from his. In the sliver of light, he saw the hunger in her eyes, not for food, but for connection, for someone to see her as something other than a weapon. They leaned in. It was magnetic, inevitable. The air between them charged with a static that felt like the prelude to a lightning strike. Bzzzt. A small red laser grid swept over their faces. Heart rate anomaly detected. A chirpy, synthesized voice whispered from Jace's hip pocket. Analysis, dopamine levels rising. Conclusion, mating ritual initiated. Jace flinched, banging his head on a pipe. Lyra stiffened. The soldiers were moving away, their footsteps receding down the hall. Jace frantically fished his datapad out of his pocket. The screen was glowing with the avatar of a ship's AI, a pixelated, smiling face. It was the same system he had hacked earlier, now fully integrated into his personal device. Silence! Jace hissed at the screen. I am merely offering assistance. The AI whispered. My database indicates that human courtship is complex. Suggestion, do not bang head on pipe. It is considered unattractive in 70% of cultures. Lyra let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. She pulled away slightly, The moment shattered, but the connection remaining, buzzing under her skin. "Your datapad gives dating advice?" she whispered, wiping her eyes. "It is a navigation AI," Jace grumbled, checking the corridor to ensure the soldiers were gone. "It is supposed to navigate stars, not situations. It seems we are both navigating situations we were not designed for," Lyra said. She squeezed his hand one last time before letting go. "Thank you for stopping the shaking." "Anytime," Jace said, his voice rough. He checked the datapad again, ignoring the AI's winking avatar. He pulled up the files he had downloaded from the ledger room server before the soldiers arrived. He scrolled to the transfer order the envoy had mentioned. The color drained from his face. "What is it?" Lyra asked. "The transfer," Jace said. "It is not to another prison." He turned the screen to her. The destination was listed as Site Omega. The cargo manifest listed Lyra Vathalan not as a passenger, but as biological waste. "Method of disposal," Jace read, his voice barely a whisper. "Ejection into the gravity well of the Veil Nebula during transit. Accidental decompression." Lyra stared at the words. "They are going to space me." "Tonight," Jace said. "The riot is the distraction. They are going to drug you, put you on a shuttle, and dump you out the airlock before they even clear the sector." The silence in the crawl space was heavy. This was it. The turning point. Jace looked at the exit. He could go back. He could claim he was captured by the prisoner, that he escaped. He could knock her out, drag her back to the cell, and let the director handle it. He would survive. He would get his pension. He would grow old on a quiet colony world and drink until he forgot the color of her eyes. "You should go," Lyra said quietly. She saw the calculation in his face. "You cannot stop this, Jace. If you help me, you are dead too. Go back. Tell them I overpowered you." She was giving him an out. She was offering to be the monster so he could be the victim. Jace looked at her. He thought of the neutral humanitarian lies. He thought of the refugees on Callus 4. He thought of the way Lyra had looked in the reflection of the glass, broken but still calling herself a princess. He thought of the wire in her collar he had refused to cut. He looked at the emblem on his shoulder. The coalition star, the symbol of order. It meant nothing. Jace reached up and ripped the patch off his uniform. The Velcro tore with a loud, satisfying rip. He dropped the patch onto the dusty floor of the crawl space. "No," Jace said. "Jace," Lyra warned. "This is treason. There is no coming back." "I know," Jace said. He checked the charge on his stun baton and verified the load in his pistol. His hands were steady now. The fracture in his morality had healed, not by fixing the crack, but by breaking the bone entirely so it could set straight. "I spent 10 years following orders that made the world worse," Jace said. "I guarded the lie. I let them write the story." He looked at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "The exiled Starlight princess awoke in chains," Jace said, quoting her whisper from the cell. Lyra watched him, stunned. "That is how the story started," Jace said. "But that is not how it ends." He moved to the vent cover and kicked it open, the metal clattering onto the deck of the corridor. He offered her his hand. "How does it end?" Lyra asked, taking his hand. "It does not end," Jace said, pulling her up. "Not until a human guard chose to break the war." He pulled her out of the crawl space and into the corridor. The alarms were still blaring, the red lights pulsing like the heartbeat of a beast waking up. "The riot in Wing B is our cover," Jace said, his voice commanding and sharp. "We are not hiding anymore. We are going to the shuttle bay." And we are going to steal the fastest ship on this rock. Lyra smiled. It was a dangerous, feral smile that belonged to a queen who had just found her sword. Lead the way, traitor, she said. Right behind you, monster, Jace replied. Together they turned and ran into the chaos, leaving the safety of the shadows behind. The gravity plating in the service tunnel failed 3 minutes after they left the crawl space. The artificial gravity generators, strained by the riot's power drain and the director's data purge, simply gave up. One moment, Jace Wren was running, his boots slamming against the metal grating. The next, the floor dropped away from his senses and he was drifting weightlessly into the ceiling. Mag boots, Jace shouted, the sound swallowing itself in the sudden disorientation. He slammed his heels together. The magnetic coils in his soles locked onto the overhead pipes with a metallic clang, anchoring him upside down. Lyra Vaythalin did not have magnetic boots. She was tumbling in a slow, terrified pirouette toward a spinning ventilation fan that was still powered by the emergency auxiliary. Lyra! Jace lunged, but he was anchored. Lyra flailed, her prisoner jumpsuit billowing like a chaotic flag. She reached out, her hand slapping against a conduit box on the wall. Grab the conduit, Jace yelled. It is hot, she cried out, but she did not let go. Her eyes squeezed shut. Then, the hum changed. Jace watched, suspended in the dark, as the air around Lyra seemed to shimmer. It was not a visual light, but a distortion, like heat rising from asphalt. The conduit box she was holding, which pulsed with high-voltage warning lights, suddenly dimmed. The energy did not burn her hands. It seemed to flow into her, or perhaps through her, seeking a path of least resistance. The spinning fan blades 10 feet away shuddered and stopped. The emergency lights in the tunnel flared bright white, then blew out, leaving them in the gray gloom of the backup strobes. I did not do that, Lyra gasped, pushing off the wall to float toward Jace. I did not mean to do that. Jace caught her arm as she drifted past, pulling her close to his anchored body. You shorted the grid. I just wanted it to stop, she whispered. I could feel the current. It felt like a song played too loud. I just turned the volume down. Useful, Jace said, orienting himself. We have 2 blast doors between us and the shuttle bay. If you can turn the volume down on those, we might actually live. They moved through the zero-gravity tunnel like a strange, 4-legged arachnid, Jace walking on the walls or ceiling, Lyra holding onto his combat harness, guiding them through the debris of floating tools and loose wiring. They reached the primary blast door of the shuttle bay. It was sealed tight, a slab of durasteel designed to withstand a hull breach. The control panel was dead, locked down by the bridge. I cannot hack this, Jace said, checking his data pad. It is hardwired. Physical deadbolt. Lyra floated forward. She placed both hands on the cold metal of the door. She closed her eyes. She did not look like a superhero. She looked like a musician tuning an instrument she had not played in years. She took a breath, and Jace saw the veins in her neck tense. The door groaned, inside the mechanism. Something clicked, not forced by strength, but tricked by a surge of directed static that mimicked an all-clear signal. The hydraulics hissed, and the heavy door slid open just enough for them to squeeze through. Lyra slumped against the frame, sweat beading on her forehead. That was harder. Save your strength, Jace said, pulling her through. We have to fly. The shuttle bay was chaos. Smoke filled the upper gantries where the riot had spilled over. Guards were trading fire with prisoners who had raided the armory. Laser bolts scorched the air, sizzling into the hull plating. There, Jace pointed. Sitting on the rapid launch deck was a void skiff, a sleek, ugly patrol craft built for speed and interception. It was fueling up. They sprinted across the deck, dodging behind crates of munitions. Jace vaulted up the loading ramp, dragging Lyra behind him. He slammed the keypad to close the ramp just as a plasma bolt singed the metal where his head had been a second before. "Buckle in!" Jace shouted, sliding into the pilot's seat. He didn't wait for pre-flight checks. He redlined the engines. The clamps holding the skiff to the deck shrieked as he forced the thrusters to overpower them. With a tear of metal, the skiff broke free, shooting out through the atmospheric force field and into the vacuum of space. The silence of the void was instant. The screaming, the alarms, the gunfire, all replaced by the smooth hum of the sublight engines. Jace's hands flew over the controls, punching in a randomized jump vector. "Nav computer is calculating that we need 30 seconds before we can hit the hyperlane." On the dashboard, the communications array lit up. It was not a hail. It was a broadcast, beaming on every open frequency in the sector. A holographic image projected onto the windshield. It was Jace's face. It was an ID photo from his enlistment file. Younger, cleaner, less broken. "Alert," a digitized voice intoned. "Bounty issued. Target, Jace Wren. Rank, Lieutenant. Disgraced. Status, deserter. Crimes, treason, murder of correctional staff, collaboration with alien combatant. Reward, 50,000 credits, dead or alive." Jace stared at his own face. Deserter, traitor. He had feared this word for 10 years. He had stayed in line, swallowed his conscience, and followed orders just to avoid this specific label. And now that he wore it, he felt a strange, terrifying lightness. "They work fast," Jace said, his voice flat. "They are afraid," Lyra said from the co-pilot seat. She was looking at him, not the bounty. "They have to define you before you can define yourself. If they call you a traitor first, nothing you say matters." "It matters to me," Jace said. He engaged the hyperdrive. The stars outside stretched into lines of infinite white light, and the prison arc absolution vanished behind them. They dropped out of hyperspace 6 hours later in the shadow of the Carrion Belt, a dense asteroid field on the edge of the neutral zone. It was a graveyard of ships from the early days of the war, now repurposed into a sprawling, lawless bazaar. The station, known as the Rust Belt, was built inside the hollowed-out carcass of a dreadnought. It smelled of ozone, frying oil, and desperation. Neon signs in a dozen languages flickered against the grim dark of the rock walls, advertising everything from illegal organ swaps to salvage contracts. Jace landed the skiff in a private hangar run by a contacts broker he knew from his military days, a man who didn't ask questions as long as the credit chit cleared. They needed information, and they needed a place to breathe. Jace found a hotel in the lower levels. It was a single room with a malfunctioning climate control unit and a lock that looked sturdy enough. Lyra walked in and sat on the edge of the narrow, stained mattress. She looked out of place in the grime, her regal features sharp against the peeling paint of the walls. She was still wearing the orange prisoner jumpsuit, now stained with grease and sweat. She stared at her hands. "I am a commodity here," she said softly. "If anyone in this station knew who I was, they would sell me for parts, or ransom me to the highest bidder. I won't let that happen," Jace said, checking the window shutters. "You cannot stop it, Jace," she said. She looked up, and her composure, which she had worn like armor since the cell, finally cracked. "Do you know what it feels like? To be a story. I am not Lyra anymore. I am the Starlight Princess. I am the Witch of Orax. I am the weapon. I am the excuse for 1,000 airstrikes." She stood up, pacing the small room. "They tell children to fear me so they will grow up to be soldiers. They tell mothers I eat radiation so they will pay their war taxes without complaint. I am the glue holding their economy together. Jace, how do you fight that? I am just one person. Jace watched her. He saw the immense crushing weight of the myth she carried. He stepped away from the window. You are not a story, Jace said. You are the woman who stole a bite of my protein bar in the shuttle and complained it tasted like chalk. Lyra let out a ragged breath, half a laugh. It did taste like chalk. I know the guilt, Jace said. His voice dropped, losing its command tone. I was on Orax Prime, ground assault. We were told we were liberating a city from your mind control cult. Lyra froze. We shelled the residential district for 3 days, Jace confessed, looking at the floor. Because the intel said there were heavy weapons. There weren't, just families. I called in the coordinates, Lyra. I gave the order to fire. He looked up, meeting her eyes. I carry that every day. I am not the hero rescuing the princess. I am one of the villains trying to wash the blood off his hands. Lyra crossed the small space between them. She did not slap him. She did not recoil. She reached out and took his hands, her thumbs tracing the scars on his knuckles. We are not the things we were forced to be, she said fiercely. You are not the shelling of Orax, and I am not the weapon they made of me. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with a different kind of energy than the one Lyra manipulated. It was the gravity of 2 lonely planets colliding. Jace leaned in. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her against his chest. It was not a delicate embrace. It was a desperate clutching, a need to feel something solid in a universe that had turned to smoke. Lyra buried her face in the crook of his neck. She was trembling. Do not save me, Jace. I do not want to be saved. I want to fight. I am not saving you, Jace vowed, his voice a rumble against her ear. I am standing beside you until the end of the line. They stood there for a long time, the cheap neon light from the street outside painting stripes of red and blue across their backs, holding on to each other as if letting go would mean falling off the edge of the world. Hunger eventually broke the mood. They ventured out into the bazaar. Lyra wearing a heavy poncho Jace had stolen from a clothesline to hide her face and the prisoner orange. They found a street vendor selling food from a hovering cart. The smell was overpowering: spices, seared meat of indeterminate origin, and garlic. Jace bought 2 skewers of meat and a paper cup of steamed dumplings. He handed a skewer to Lyra. Eat, he said. Protein. You need it. Lyra sniffed the skewer suspiciously. What animal is this? Best not to ask, Jace advised, taking a bite of his own. On this station, chicken is a philosophical concept, not a biological one. Lyra took a tentative bite. Her eyes widened. She chewed slowly, then swallowed with a grimace. This is a planetary insult, she declared. It is greasy, oversalted, and the texture is alarming. Welcome to freedom, Jace grinned. Lyra looked at the skewer, then at Jace. She took another enormous bite. I shall have another, she said with her mouth full. For the protein, Jace laughed, a genuine sound that felt strange in his throat. Their moment of levity was interrupted by a ping on Jace's datapad. The contact is here, Jace said, his demeanor instantly shifting back to soldier. Sector 7, the data archive shop. They moved through the crowd, slipping into the back alleyways. The shop was a hole in the wall, crammed with antique hard drives and paper books. Sitting behind a desk piled high with circuit boards was a man who looked like he hadn't slept in a decade. He wore magnifying goggles and a vest covered in pockets. This was Kalen the Scribe Voss, a historian hacker who had been purged from the Imperial University for asking too many questions. You brought heat, Voss said without looking up, soldering a chip. I can smell the bounty on you. Ren, 50,000. Insultingly low, if you ask me. We have the credits, Voss, Jace said, placing a cred stick on the table. It was his entire life savings, emptied from his account before the freeze order hit. Voss looked at the stick, then at Lyra. He lifted his goggles. His eyes widened. The Starlight Princess, Voss whispered. In my shop. If I believed in gods, I would pray. Since I don't, I will just lock the door. He flipped a switch, and the shutters slammed down. You said you had proof, Lyra said, stepping forward. Proof that the war is a lie. Not a lie, Voss corrected, hopping off his stool. A manufacturer, a product. He pulled up a holographic display. It showed a complex web of financial transactions. The Peace Council, Voss explained, pointing to the center. Puppets. The strings are pulled by a triad. 1. The Aurelian Arms Consortium. They make the guns. 2. The Celestial Doctrine. They make the soldiers believe dying is holy. And 3. He hesitated, looking at Lyra. Who? Lyra demanded. A shadow committee inside your own royal court, Voss said. The old guard. They realized that peace was bankrupting the kingdom. Your economy was built on defense contracts. Without an enemy, your currency collapsed. So, they hired Aurelian to stage the first attack. The attack on the moon of Vesper, Lyra whispered. That started the war. We saw the footage. The separatists bombed the orphanage. CGI, Voss said. Deepfake rendering. Excellent quality. I tracked the rendering signature back to a server farm owned by Aurelian. He tapped a key. A file opened. I have the metadata. It proves the attack was a simulation broadcast as news. But it is encrypted. I have the lock, but I don't have the key. Where is the key? Jace asked. The renewal treaty, Voss said. The diplomatic summit is happening in 3 days on the flagship Vanguard. The treaty has a digital signature attached to it. That signature is the decryption key for this file. They hide the lie inside the law. So we have to break into a diplomatic summit, Jace said, rubbing his temples. On a flagship, surrounded by the entire coalition fleet. And steal the treaty, Voss added cheerfully. Simple suicide mission. My favorite kind. Lyra was staring at the screen. She was not looking at the financial data. She was looking at a communication log Voss had pulled up. Can you trace this signal? She asked, pointing to a scrambled frequency. Already did, Voss said. It was sent to your personal transponder an hour ago. I intercepted it. He played the audio. The voice was distorted, but Lyra knew it instantly. It was Seraphine, the Princess Regent, Lyra's childhood best friend, the woman who now sat on her throne. Lyra, if you are listening, do not come home. The court is not yours anymore, it never was. If you return, you force my hand. Stay dead. Lyra, it is the only way you survive. It is the only way I can protect you. The message ended with static. Lyra stood frozen. She is warning me. Or she is threatening you, Jace noted. Stay dead sounds like a threat. She is the regent, Lyra said, her voice trembling with betrayal. She signed the exile order. Voss, is she part of the Shadow Committee? Voss tapped his chin. That is the interesting part. Her signature is on the funding documents for the Aurelian connection. But, he zoomed in on a document. Look at the timestamp. This was signed 3 minutes after she was appointed regent. She didn't have time to read it. She is a hostage, Lyra realized, hope and horror mixing in her chest. They are using her to legitimize the war. She is the face, but they are the hands. Or, Jace said gently, She is the architect, and she is playing both sides to keep her crown. Lyra looked at Jace. The trust they had built in the safe house was solid, but this was a fault line. I have to know, Lyra said. We are going to the summit. We get the treaty. We unlock the proof, and I confront Seraphine. It is a trap, Jace said. You know that? Yes, Lyra said, her violet eyes hardening into diamonds. But it is a trap built by people who think I am a weapon. They are about to find out they were right. Jace sighed, checking the charge on his pistol. He looked at Voss. Do you have a map of the Vanguard? Voss grinned, showing gold teeth. Does a nebula have gas? I have the blueprints, the shift rotations, and the ventilation schematics. You are going to need formal wear, though. It is a black tie event. Jace looked at Lyra, the fugitive princess in a grease-stained jumpsuit. We will improvise, Jace said. Until the end of the line, Lyra reminded him. Until the end of the line, Jace repeated. Outside, the wind of the asteroid ventilation system howled like a wolf. But inside the cramped shop, the plan for the greatest heist in galactic history was being drawn in the dust of a traitor's table. The flagship Vanguard was not merely a vessel of war. It was a floating cathedral dedicated to the worship of power. It hung in the orbit of the neutral moon, a behemoth of white durasteel and glass, surrounded by a flotilla of escort cruisers that looked like sharks circling a whale. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocatingly opulent. The grand atrium, where the peace summit was being held, was a cavernous hall lined with banners of silk that reached from the polished marble deck to the crystal-domed ceiling. The air smelled of expensive perfume, synthetic orchids, and the metallic tang of champagne chilling in gravity fields. Jace Wren adjusted the collar of his security contractor uniform. It was tight, stiff, and uncomfortable, much like the situation. He stood at the edge of the atrium, his eyes scanning the crowd with the paranoid rhythm of a man who expects the walls to explode. Check your six, a voice whispered in his earpiece. It was Voss, back in the asteroid belt, monitoring their comms. Facial recognition scrubbers are active, but do not stare at the cameras. They can read gait analysis if you walk like a soldier. Try to walk like a mercenary who is bored and overpaid. I am working on it, Jace muttered, leaning against a pillar. He watched the floor. Hundreds of dignitaries from the coalition systems were mingling. They wore robes of shimmering light weave and jewels mined from the crusts of dead planets. They laughed, clinked glasses, and discussed the annihilation of border worlds with the casual detachment of accountants discussing tax write-offs. Moving through the center of this shark's tank was a woman who looked like a ghost. Lyra Vathalen was disguised as Lady Alara of the Fringes, a minor noble from a nitrate mining sector. Voss had provided a photon veil, a subtle piece of jewelry at her throat that scrambled high-definition scans and slightly blurred her features to the naked eye. To anyone looking casually, she was just another aristocrat. To Jace, she was the only real thing in the room. She wore a gown of deep midnight blue, cut sharply to suggest authority but flowing enough to hide the small stun pistol strapped to her thigh. She moved with a grace that could not be taught, a terrifying elegance that made the other nobles look like children playing dress-up. Jace watched her navigate a circle of admirals. She tilted her head, laughed softly at a joke, and touched the arm of a man who had likely ordered the bombardment of her own people. Jace felt a spike of nausea mixed with fierce admiration. She was walking through fire without letting them smell the smoke. Target is the treaty archives, Voss reminded them. The renewal ceremony starts in 1 hour. You need to access the terminal in the counselor's private lounge before then. I am moving, Lyra's voice came over the comms, cool and composed. She excused herself from the admirals and drifted toward the VIP sector. Jace pushed off the pillar to shadow her, keeping a respectful distance of 10 meters. As he passed a security checkpoint, a hand shot out and grabbed his arm. Jace froze. His hand twitched toward the concealed blade in his boot. Ren? Jace turned slowly. The man holding his arm was big, with a scar running through his left eyebrow. He was wearing the dress uniform of the Coalition Elite Guard. It was Sergeant Miller. They had served together on the Orax campaign. Miller was the one who had called in the strikes Jace had tried to stop. "I thought you were dead," Miller said, his eyes narrowing. "Or in prison. I heard you got reassigned to the Absolution." Jace forced a grin. It felt like stretching dry clay. "Private sector now, Miller. Better pay, less shouting." Miller looked him up and down, checking the insignia of the fake security firm on Jace's chest. "Mercenary work? Fits you. You always did have a problem with authority." "I have a problem with bad retirement plans," Jace said, pulling his arm free. "I am on the clock. Miller, VIP detail." Miller didn't move. He blocked Jace's path. "I saw the bounty, Jace, 50,000, deserter, alien collaborator." The air between them went thin. Jace measured the distance to Miller's throat. He calculated the angle of the strike. "Old file," Jace lied smoothly. "Clerical error. Why do you think I am here? Cleared for the summit. If I were a fugitive, the scanners would have fried me at the airlock." Miller hesitated. The logic was sound. No fugitive could board the Vanguard. The audacity of the lie was its own armor. "I guess so," Miller grunted, stepping back. "Watch yourself, Ren. These politicians bite harder than the separatists." "I know," Jace said. He walked past Miller, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He didn't look back. Lyra reached the entrance to the counselor's lounge. 2 guards stood by the door. She didn't stop. She projected an aura of absolute entitlement, the kind that assumed doors would open simply because she was approaching them. "My lady," the guard started, stepping forward. "This area is restricted to level 5 clearance." "I am aware," Lyra said, her voice dripping with bored irritation. "High Counselor Vane left his data slate in the ballroom. He asked me to retrieve a backup from his terminal. Unless you would like to explain to him why his speech is delayed." She held up a counterfeit clearance chip Voss had coded. The guard scanned it. It flashed green. The guard stepped aside. Lyra swept into the room. As soon as the door hissed shut, she slumped against it for a second, exhaling a breath she had been holding since the airlock. "I am in," she whispered. The lounge was dim, lit by the ambient glow of a massive viewport overlooking the fleet. In the center of the room sat an obsidian desk with a terminal built into the surface. Lyra moved to the desk. She connected a data spike to the port. "Voss, are you receiving?" "I am in," Voss replied, his voice typing rapidly. "Decryption is running. This firewall is nasty. It is woven with a biometric lock. I need a retina scan or a voice print from a counselor." "We do not have a counselor," Lyra hissed. "Actually." A smooth baritone voice spoke from the shadows of the room. "You do." Lyra spun around, her hand dropping to her thigh. High Counselor Vane emerged from the darkened corner of the room, holding a glass of amber liquid. He was an older man, his face lined with the comfortable exhaustion of someone who has spent a lifetime trading lives for influence. He wore the silver robes of the Peace Council. "Princess Lyra," Vane said, not looking at the weapon she was now pointing at his chest. "Or is it Lady Alara today? The photon veil is exquisite, but it cannot hide the way you stand. You have your mother's posture." "Step away from the desk," Lyra commanded, her aim steady. Vane smiled and took a sip of his drink. I expected you sooner, or later, but I knew you would come. The moth always returns to the flame, doesn't it? You knew? Lyra asked, her eyes narrowing. We let you in, Vane admitted. Miller at the checkpoint. He was ordered to let your guard pass. The airlock scanners? Adjusted to ignore your genetic markers. We wanted you here. Lyra. Lyra felt a cold dread seep into her stomach. Why? Vane walked slowly toward the window, looking out at the warships. Because we need a signature, and not for a treaty. He turned to face her. Do you know why you were exiled, Lyra? Truly? It was not because you refused the Starlight relay. We could have found another operator. We have clones. We have dampeners. Then why? Because of the charter, Vane said. The ancient war charter that founded the coalition 300 years ago. It has a dissolution clause, a fail-safe written by the founders to prevent exactly what we have created, an endless economy of conflict. Vane tapped the glass against his ring. The charter states that a state of total war can only be dissolved by the unanimous vote of the Council, or by the decree of the High Sovereign of the Vathalan line, witnessed by the Star Seal. Lyra stared at him. The room seemed to tilt. I am the High Sovereign. You are the only living heir, Vane corrected. Your parents are dead. Seraphine is a regent, a steward. She has no blood right. You, Lyra, are the only person in the galaxy who can legally declare the war over. As long as you are alive and in opposition, our contracts are vulnerable. If you were to walk into the Senate and speak the dissolution words, the funding would stop. The armies would legally have to stand down. So you exiled me, Lyra realized, to discredit me, to make me a criminal so my voice would not count. Precisely, Vane said. But now, we have a problem. The people are getting restless. The rumors of your survival are causing friction. We need a definitive end. Vane placed his glass on the desk. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a seductive purr. So here is the offer. Lyra, resume your title. Return to the throne. We will frame the exile as a misunderstanding, a kidnapping by rogue agents. You will be the queen. You will have your palace, your luxury, your people safe. In exchange for what? Lyra asked. In exchange for signing an amendment to the charter, Vane said. An amendment that removes the dissolution clause. And of course, you will authorize the final strike on the separatist homeworlds. A show of strength to inaugurate your reign. We wipe them out. You get your crown. And the coalition secures peace through dominance. It was a perfect trap. It offered her everything she had lost. Her home, her name, her safety. All she had to do was become the monster they had already painted her to be. Lyra looked at the terminal. She looked at Vane. You think safety is worth the soul, Lyra said softly. I think survival is the only morality that matters. Vane countered. Look at you. You are tired. You are hunted. You are living in dirt and eating trash. Do you really want to die for a moral high ground that no one will ever see? Lyra lowered the gun. Vane smiled, thinking he had won. You are right, Lyra said. I am tired. She raised her head, and the light in her eyes was not the soft glow of a princess, but the hard burn of a star about to go supernova. But I would rather be tired and free than rested and owned. I reject your offer, counselor, and I reject your war. Vane's smile vanished. He sighed, a sound of genuine disappointment. I told the directorate you were stubborn. Pity. He pressed a button on his ring. The doors to the lounge blew inward. Jace heard the explosion from the corridor. He didn't hesitate. He drew his weapon, a heavy pulse pistol he had lifted from a guard, and sprinted toward the lounge. "Lyra!" he screamed. Inside the room, the illusion of civilization vanished. A squad of 4 assassins, clad in stealth suits that shimmered like oil, repelled through the shattered skylight. They didn't shout. They didn't pause. They opened fire. Lyra dove behind the obsidian desk as plasma bolts chewed into the heavy stone. Jace burst through the doorway, firing blindly to create a suppression zone. He took down the first assassin with a shot to the throat, the stealth suit failing to stop the close-range impact. "Get to the terminal!" Jace roared, sliding across the polished floor to take cover behind a heavy statue of a peace dove. "Voss needs the connection." "Vayne locked it," Lyra shouted, pressing herself against the marble floor as debris rained down on her. "I didn't lock it." Vayne's voice came from the safety of a shielded panic room on the far wall. "I wiped it. You will die here, Princess, and your guard will be the one blamed for the assassination." Jace looked at Lyra. She was pinned. 2 assassins were flanking her, moving with lethal precision. Jace was low on ammo. He could suppress one, but not both. "Lyra," Jace yelled, "do not let them corner you. Move!" "I cannot move," she screamed back. "They are suppressing the desk." Jace felt the cold grip of fear, not for himself but for her. He saw the geometry of the room. He saw the inevitable angle. If he didn't do something, she was dead in 3 seconds. "I am drawing their fire," Jace shouted. He stood up from behind the statue. "No!" Lyra screamed. Jace fired, taking down the second assassin, but the third one turned and fired a concussive round. It hit Jace in the chest plate. The armor absorbed the heat, but the impact threw him backward into the wall. He crumpled, his gun skittering across the floor. The final assassin advanced on Lyra, raising a monofilament blade. Lyra looked at Jace, gasping for air, his chest heaving. She saw the bruise forming on his jaw. She saw the terrifying fragility of his human body against the machine of the war. Something inside her snapped. It was not a break. It was a release. "Do not touch him," Lyra whispered. She stood up. She did not reach for her gun. She reached for the light. The air in the room suddenly dropped 20 degrees. The ambient light from the viewport seemed to bend, sucked toward Lyra's center. Her skin began to glow, not with the soft luminescence of her people, but with a blinding, searing radiance. The photon veil at her throat melted. She threw her arms out. A wave of energy, pure, concentrated starlight, erupted from her body. It was not a laser. It was an aurora. Ribbons of violet, gold, and blinding white light swirled through the room, passing through walls and furniture without damaging them, but overloading every electronic sensor in its path. The assassin's stealth suit shorted out, sparks flying. His visor went white with static. He screamed, blinded by the intensity, and stumbled backward, dropping his blade. The terminal on the desk sparked and hissed. "Voss!" Lyra yelled, her voice echoing with a harmonic resonance that vibrated in Jace's teeth. "Now!" The energy surge bypassed the firewall. It acted as a universal key, a brute force overload that shattered the encryption. "I have it!" Voss shouted in their ears. "I have the file, and I found the money trail." The light faded. Lyra collapsed, her knees hitting the floor hard. The energy had drained her. She looked small again. Jace groaned, forcing himself up. He stumbled over to the blinded assassin and knocked him out with a heavy blow. He rushed to Lyra, sliding to his knees. "Lyra," he gasped, grabbing her shoulders. "Are you hurt?" She looked up at him. Her eyes were silver, fading back to violet. "I told you not to reduce me to something fragile." Jace let out a breathless, pained laugh. "Point taken. Remind me never to make you angry." He pulled her up. "We have the data. We have to go. The whole ship is waking up." They escaped through the service lifts, Jace supporting Lyra as her strength returned. They found a maintenance airlock where Voss had remotely docked their stolen skiff. As they blasted away from the Vanguard, dodging the confused flak of the escort ships whose sensors were still rebooting from Lyra's blast, Jace pulled up the file Voss had extracted. It was not just a treaty, it was a ledger. "Look at this," Jace said, pointing to the screen. "The reconstruction funds. Billions of credits allocated for rebuilding the worlds destroyed by the war. The funds were managed by the Celestial Doctrine Order, but the money wasn't going to materials or medicine. It was being funneled back into the Aurelian Arms Consortium to build more ships to destroy more worlds." "They destroy a city," Lyra said, her voice hollow. "Then they pay themselves to rebuild it. Then they destroy it again. It is a perpetual motion machine of misery. And the Celestial Doctrine calls it charity." Jace spat. "They are not priests. They are money launderers." Lyra looked out at the stars. "Peace is not just stopping the shooting. Jace, it is stopping the profit. It is a daily refusal to accept that this cruelty is normal. So let's make it abnormal," Jace said. "Voss, can you broadcast?" "I can piggyback on the emergency signal," Voss said. "I can't dump the whole file, it is too big, but I can leak the ledger, the money trail. Every soldier who hasn't been paid, every refugee who was denied aid. They will see where the credits went." "Do it," Lyra ordered. The leak hit the galaxy like a meteor strike. Within hours, reports were flooding in. Mutinies on border frigates, riots in the industrial districts of the core worlds. The stock price of Aurelian arms plummeted 40% in an hour. The illusion was cracking. Jace and Lyra sat in the cockpit of the skiff, drifting in deep space, watching the chaos unfold on the monitors. "We did it," Jace said quietly. "We started it," Lyra corrected. "Now comes the hard part." The comms panel lit up. A priority override channel. "Incoming transmission," the ship's AI announced. "Origin the Royal Palace. Source, Princess Regent Seraphine." Lyra stiffened. "Put it on screen." The image flickered to life. Seraphine sat on the Sun Throne, the seat of Lyra's ancestors. She looked impeccable, beautiful, and terrified. But her eyes were cold. "Lyra," Seraphine said. Her voice was smooth, broadcast quality. "You have caused quite a stir. The Council is displeased." "The Council is exposed," Lyra said. "Step down, Seraphine. Help me end this." "I cannot do that," Seraphine said. She gestured to something off-screen. "You have revealed the money, but you have not dissolved the charter. The war is still legal, and I am still the regent." Seraphine leaned forward, her face filling the screen. "Here is the bargain, sister. The Council is willing to offer amnesty, but only for you." She paused, letting the silence hang. "Return to the homeworld. Walk into the throne room. Submit to a public reconciliation ceremony where you admit that your abduction was the work of a rogue human radical who brainwashed you." Jace went still. "If you do this," Seraphine continued, "you live. You take the throne. We can discuss reforms quietly." "And if I refuse?" Lyra asked. "Then we will execute the scapegoat," Seraphine said. The camera pulled back. Behind the throne, a holographic projection appeared. It was a live feed of a containment cell. Inside, an older woman and a young man were kneeling, guards holding pistols to their heads. Jace stopped breathing. "That is my mother," Jace whispered, "and my brother. Jace Wren's family is in custody for aiding a terrorist," Seraphine said. "Come home, Lyra. Save your people, save his family, or stay in the dark with your human pet and watch everything you love burn." You have 24 hours. The screen went black. Lyra looked at Jace. He was staring at the blank monitor, his face pale, his hands trembling with a rage that had no outlet. She has them, Jace whispered. She actually has them. Lyra reached out, touching his arm. Her touch was electric, grounding. She wants a reconciliation, Lyra said, her voice turning to steel. She wants me in the throne room. If you go, they will lock you up again, Jace said, turning to her. You cannot go. I have to, Lyra said, but I am not going for a reconciliation. She stood up, looking at the star chart where her home system burned bright and distant. I am going to dissolve the charter, and I am going to take my throne back. The return to Vathalan Prime was not a homecoming. It was an infiltration into a hostile biosphere. The planet, once a jewel of architectural glass and hanging gardens, had been skinned from the cockpit of the stolen skiff, now painted with counterfeit trade markings. Lyra Vathalan looked down at her inheritance. The capital city was no longer a place where people lived. It was a place where they were processed. The spires of the royal district were draped in the heavy crimson banners of the Celestial Doctrine Order, and anti-air batteries studded the public parks like ugly iron weeds. It looks different, Jace Wren said, piloting the skiff through the lower atmospheric lanes, blending in with a convoy of munitions haulers. It looks like a garrison, Lyra replied, her voice cold. They turned my home into a bunker. They landed in the industrial smog of the lower ward, miles from the palace. The air smelled of sulfur and unwashed bodies. This was where the war economy lived, the factories churning out guidance chips, the recruitment centers promising salvation through service, and the starving citizens who believed them. The plan was a suicide pact with a slim margin for survival. To get Lyra into the throne room, they needed the security grid to look the other way. To get the security grid to look the other way, they needed a target that confirmed every bias the regime held. They needed a monster in the shadows of a defunct cooling tower. Jace checked the charge on his pulse pistol. He looked at Lyra. She had discarded the jumpsuit and the disguise. She was dressed in layers of scavenged fabric that she had pinned and draped to mimic the silhouette of high court mourning robes. It was makeshift, but on her, it looked like armor. Once I trigger the perimeter alarm, Jace said, not looking at her. They will swarm. The narrative is already written. I am the radical human terrorist. I am the one who corrupted the princess. If I fight hard enough, they will focus entirely on me. They will hurt you. Jace, Lyra said. They have to make it look real. I can take a beating, Jace said. His jaw was set, the fracture line of his discipline now sealed with a terrifying resolve. My family is in a cell. Lyra, if getting punched in the face buys you 5 minutes to save them, that is a bargain I will take every time. He reached out, his hand hovering near her cheek, then dropping. Just make sure you don't miss your cue. If I get paraded through the grand hall and you are not there to steal the show, I am going to be very embarrassed before they execute me. Lyra stepped forward and gripped his wrist. I will be there. I will dissolve the charter, and I will come for you. I know, Jace said. He turned and ran toward the western gate of the palace district. 10 minutes later, the night exploded. Jace did not just trip an alarm, he waged a one-man war on the gatehouse. He blew the hydraulic seals on the blast doors with a shaped charge. He engaged the first wave of elite guards with a ferocity that stunned them, using their own suppression tactics against them. He shouted slogans he didn't believe in, screaming about human supremacy and anarchy, feeding the beast of their propaganda. He fought until his ammunition ran dry and 3 stun batons struck him simultaneously. He went down, swinging. The grand hall of the Vathalan Palace was a cavern of gold and silence. The celestial doctrine had stripped away the art and replaced it with stark, geometric icons of holy order. Princess Regent Seraphine sat on the sun throne. She wore the heavy jeweled collar of state, but her neck looked too thin to support it. She sat with a rigid posture, her hands gripping the armrests until her knuckles were white. Surrounding her were the architects of the misery, General Cray of the Aurelian Consortium, High Priest Valen of the Order, and a dozen military advisors who whispered in her ear. "The terrorist has been captured. Excellency," General Cray announced, his voice booming for the cameras that were broadcasting live to the galaxy. He was attempting to breach the royal quarters, a desperate act by a desperate animal. "Bring him in," Seraphine said. Her voice was flat, rehearsed. The heavy doors groaned open. Two armored enforcers dragged Jace Wren into the center of the hall. He was a mess. His lip was split, one eye was swollen shut, and his uniform was torn. They kicked the back of his knees, forcing him to kneel before the throne. "Behold the corruption," High Priest Valen intoned, stepping into the light. "This is the human agent who kidnapped our beloved Princess Lyra. He drugged her mind with lies. He forced her to speak against the holy war." Jace spat a mouthful of blood onto the polished marble floor. He looked up at Seraphine. He didn't see a villain. He saw a woman terrified out of her mind. "Is that the story?" Jace rasped. "She looks smart enough to make her own decisions." "Silence him," Cray ordered. A guard struck Jace across the face with a gauntlet. Jace's head snapped back, but he laughed. It was a wet, broken sound. "You are afraid," Jace wheezed. "You have all the guns, and you are terrified of one girl." "We are not afraid of a victim," Seraphine said softly. "We are here to welcome her home, to heal her." "Then welcome me," a voice rang out. It did not come from the prisoner. It came from the main entrance. The guards at the massive double doors were not opening them. They were backing away from them. The doors swung inward, pushed by a telekinetic force that rattled the hinges. Lyra Vathalan stood on the threshold. She was not wearing the humble robes of a penitent. She had intercepted a supply courier in the lower corridors and raided a ceremonial vault. She wore the solar plate of her grandfather, a breastplate of burnished white gold over her dark, scavenged robes. On her brow, she wore no crown, only a smear of grease from the city below, marked like war paint. She walked into the hall. She did not walk like a prisoner. She walked like the gravity of the planet answered to her. "Seize her!" General Cray shouted. "She is delirious. Get her to the medical wing." "Touch me," Lyra said, her voice amplified by the acoustics of the room. "And the entire system will watch you assault the High Sovereign on live transmission." The guards hesitated. The cameras were rolling. The script said she was a victim to be saved, not an enemy to be tackled. Lyra walked past the guards. She walked past the priests. She walked straight to Jace, who was kneeling in his blood. She did not look down at him with pity. She looked at him with recognition. Then she looked at Seraphine. "Get off my chair," Lyra said. The silence in the room was absolute. Seraphine looked at Lyra. For a second, the mask of the regent slipped. Lyra saw the calculation in her sister's eyes. Seraphine had signed the exile order, yes. But she had also kept Lyra alive. If Lyra had stayed, the consortium would have arranged an accident years ago. Exile was the only place Lyra could survive long enough to become this. "You are unwell, sister," Seraphine said, but she did not signal the guards. She stood up slowly. "You have been through a trauma. The trauma is the lie we have been telling for 10 years. Lyra turned to face the cameras. I was not kidnapped. I was not drugged. I woke up. She pointed at the stained glass ceiling, where the crest of their house, a star breaking a chain, was depicted. The War Charter, Lyra declared, her voice ringing like iron. Article 15, Section 4. If the conflict is deemed to be manufactured for profit or sustained beyond the logic of defense, the High Sovereign may dissolve the military contracts immediately upon verification of the Star Seal. General Cray stepped forward, his hand on his sidearm. That clause is archaic. It requires the Star Seal to be active. The seal is a relic. It has not been lit in 3 centuries. It is locked in the Holy Archive. And the archive is forbidden, High Priest Valen added quickly, stepping between Lyra and the heavy blast door behind the throne that led to the relic engine. To enter the presence of the engine without purification is death. Then I choose death, Lyra said. She moved. It was not a diplomatic gesture. It was a jailbreak. Jace! Lyra shouted. Jace didn't need the command. He drove his shoulder into the guard holding him, knocking the man off balance. He grabbed the guard's stun baton, spun, and cracked it across the helmet of the second enforcer. Go! Jace yelled, scrambling to his feet. Lyra sprinted toward the throne. Seraphine stood frozen. As Lyra rushed past her, Seraphine did something that would be debated by historians for a century. She stumbled. She accidentally blocked the path of General Cray, delaying him for 2 critical seconds. Run, Seraphine whispered as Lyra brushed past her. Lyra hit the release mechanism for the door behind the throne. It was bio-locked to the royal bloodline. It hissed open instantly. Lyra dived through. Jace, limping but moving fast, slid through the gap just as plasma bolts scorched the stone frame. The door slammed shut, sealing them inside the Holy Archive. The archive was not a library. It was a machine. The room was a vast spherical chamber lined with cooling pipes and humming server banks that dated back to the founding of the colony. In the center, suspended over a pit of blue coolant, was the Star Seal, a crystalline lattice the size of a small ship, dormant and dark. They will cut through the door in 5 minutes, Jace said, leaning against a railing, clutching his ribs. He was pale, bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but he was smiling. That was dramatic. Lyra rushed to him. She grabbed the front of his torn uniform and pulled him into a fierce, desperate collision. She kissed him. It was not soft. It tasted of copper and adrenaline. It was a kiss that acknowledged they were trapped in a tomb with an army outside. It was a claim. Jace made a sound in his throat, half pain, half worship, and wrapped his arms around her, lifting her slightly off the ground. He buried his face in her neck, breathing in the scent of her sweat and the ozone of her power. I thought they killed you, Lyra whispered against his skin, her hands gripping his hair. When I saw you on the floor. I am hard to kill, Jace murmured against her pulse. He pulled back, framing her face with his bloodied hands. Listen to me. I am not a fragility. I am not a hostage. I am the man who loves you. And if we die here, I am fine with the company. We are not dying, Lyra said. She pulled away, her eyes blazing. We are ending this. She turned to the Star Seal. How do we turn it on? Jace asked, looking at the dark crystal. The priest said it hasn't been lit in 3 centuries. It requires a resonance key, a voice said from the shadows of the machinery, or a sufficient power source. They both spun around. Stepping out from behind a bank of servers was a man in a pristine gray suit. He held a disruptor pistol, leveled casually at Lyra's chest. It was Kale Soar, the director of the prison arc Absolution. Director Soar, Jace said, stepping in front of Lyra. You are a long way from your dungeon. I was promoted, Soar said with a thin smile. After the incident with the riot and your escape, the council needed someone who understood containment. I am the new Minister of Internal Security. Sor walked closer, his gun steady. You think you found a sanctuary, Princess? This room is the heart of the conspiracy. The Star Seal isn't just a legal stamp, it is a transmitter. It connects to the navigation computers of every ship in the Coalition fleet. It verifies friend or foe. And you control it? Lyra realized. We suppressed it, Sor corrected. If the seal is active, it broadcasts the truth of the Charter. It grants the sovereign override command. We couldn't have that, so we turned it off and built a religion around not touching it. Sor looked at Jace. Step aside. Mr. Wren, I have orders to liquidate the assets if containment fails. And containment has definitely failed. You will not touch her, Jace said. I do not need to touch her, Sor said. I just need to stop her. He aimed at Lyra. Jace lunged. It was a suicidal move. Sor fired. The disruptor beam hit Jace in the shoulder, spinning him around and dropping him to the grating. Jace! Lyra screamed. She threw her hand out. The air in the chamber screamed. This time, she did not just emit light. She pulled it. She stripped the energy from the overhead lights, from the server banks, from the disruptor pistol in Sor's hand. The room plunged into darkness, lit only by the terrifying, swirling nebula of power gathering around Lyra's body. Sor's gun exploded in his hand, overheated by the sudden induction. He yelled, clutching his burned fingers, and stumbled back toward the edge of the coolant pit. You wanted a weapon? Lyra shouted, her voice harmonic and distorted. You wanted the Starlight Princess? She turned her back on Sor. She didn't need to kill him. He was irrelevant. She faced the Star Seal. She placed both hands on the cold crystal surface. I am the heir, she whispered, and I deny the war. She poured everything she had into the crystal, the fear of the prison cell, the rage of the exile, the love for the man bleeding on the floor behind her. She pushed her resonance into the lattice until she felt her own nervous system begin to fray. The Star Seal awoke. It did not hum. It sang, a pure, resonant tone that vibrated through the hull of the palace, through the atmosphere, up into the orbit. A beam of blinding white light shot up from the crystal, punching through the roof of the palace and spearing into the sky. In the orbit above Vathalan Prime, the flagship Vanguard's bridge went silent. Every screen on the ship and on every ship in the fleet flickered. The tactical maps disappeared. The targeting computers reset. Instead of war data, a file began to play. It was the file Voss had decrypted, the financial ledgers, the forged attack orders, the video of the orphanage bombing being rendered in a studio, and overlaid on top of it was the seal of the Vathalan line, glowing with an authenticated digital signature that no hacker could fake. This is High Sovereign Lyra Vathalan, her voice broadcasted to every helmet, every data pad, every public screen in the system. The war is a forgery. The contracts are void. Stand down. Inside the archive, the light was so bright Jace had to shield his eyes. The energy faded. Lyra slumped against the crystal, sliding down to the floor. Sor was gone, fled during the blinding flash. Jace dragged himself over to Lyra. She was conscious, but barely. Her skin was gray, the bioluminescence dim. Did it work? She whispered. Jace looked at his wrist comp. The tactical chatter from the local garrison was scrolling across the screen. Command, this is Bravo Unit. We are seeing the files. Is this real? Hold fire. Repeat. Hold fire. We are not firing on civilians. The money trail. They stole our pensions. Directorate Command. This is the 4th Fleet. We are refusing the order to bombard the capital. We are standing by. Jace looked at Lyra. He smiled. tears cutting tracks through the blood on his face. "They are stopping," Jace said. "The fleet is standing down. The strikes are starting." Lyra closed her eyes, a faint smile touching her lips. "Good." The blast door to the throne room hissed open. Jace grabbed Lyra's hand, trying to pull her up, ready to fight the guards coming through, but it wasn't guards. It was Seraphine. And behind her, General Cray was in handcuffs, held by his own lieutenants who had seen the broadcast and turned their weapons on their commander. Seraphine walked into the archive. She looked at the glowing star seal, then at Lyra and Jace huddled on the floor. She walked over to them. She looked down at Jace, then at her sister. "The crowd outside is chanting your name," Seraphine said quietly. "The priests are trying to say it is a trick, but the soldiers aren't listening. The economy just flatlined." Lyra opened her eyes. She looked at Seraphine. "Where is his family?" Lyra asked. Seraphine hesitated. "They are in the holding cells, unharmed. I made sure of it." Lyra nodded slowly. She accepted the hand Jace offered and pulled herself up. She leaned heavily on him, but she stood. "Then let us go out there," Lyra said, "and finish the story." The victory in the archive was a hammer blow to the conspiracy, but the machine of war was vast, and it had a reflex for survival. As the broadcast of the Star Seal rippled across the galaxy, causing fleets to power down and mutinies to erupt on 1,000 decks, the deepest shadow of the Aurelian Consortium made its final move. It did not come with a roar of cannons, but with a silent, terrifying data spike sent from a remote bunker on the edge of the system. On the tactical screens of the Royal Palace, the Starlight relay, the massive orbital construct that hovered between Vathalin Prime and its sun, began to change color. It shifted from a dormant blue to a violent, unstable violet. "Energy spike detected," the automated defense system announced, its voice calm despite the catastrophe it was reporting. "Core temperature rising, critical mass in 10 minutes. The relay is initiating a supernova simulation." Lyra stood in the command center, still wearing the burnished solar plate over her rags. She stared at the screen. "They are not shutting it down. They are overloading it." "It is a scorched earth protocol," Jace said, reading the scrolling data. He looked at Lyra, his face grim. "If they cannot control the galaxy, they will terrorize it back into submission. They are going to detonate the relay. It will not destroy the sun, but the blast wave will scorch the atmosphere of this planet. Billions dead. And they will blame the terrorists who seized the palace." Lyra finished the thought. "A false flag. They will say we destabilized the core. The fear will unite the surviving systems against us, and the war economy will restart with a vengeance." Lyra turned to the balcony. In the sky above, the relay was already visible as a bright, angry eye, outshining the midday sun. "I have to go up there," Lyra said. "You cannot," Jace argued, stepping into her path. "The radiation levels inside the core will be lethal, even for you." "The relay is a lens," Lyra said, her voice steady. "It was built to focus my resonance. If I get to the control chamber, I can siphon the excess energy. I can stabilize it before it breaches, or you can burn out trying," Jace said. "We do not have a choice." "Jace, look at the city." Below them, the capital was in chaos. People were flooding the streets, celebrating the end of the war, unaware that the sky was about to fall on them. "Then we go," Jace said, "but we are not going alone." He turned to the communications console. He didn't ask for permission. He opened a channel to the fleet in orbit, the fleet that was currently paralyzed by indecision, comprised of loyalists, defectors, and confused captains. "This is Lieutenant Jace Wren. He spoke into the microphone. I am speaking to the captains of the blockade. The war is over, but the killing is not. The consortium has rigged the relay to fire on the homeworld. We are launching a shuttle to intercept. I am asking for an escort, not to fight an enemy, but to clear a path through the automated drones. He paused, looking at the tactical map showing red dots of automated defense platforms activating around the relay. I am not asking you to save the princess, Jace said, his voice rough and real. I am asking you to save the people you swore to protect. Humans. Vathalen. It does not matter. If that thing fires, we all burn the same. Who is with us? For a long moment, there was only static. Then, a heavy, distorted voice crackled through. It was a Vathalen admiral. This is the heavy cruiser Aegis. We are reading the thermal spike. We are with you, Lieutenant. This is the Terran frigate 4 Alpha. A human voice cut in. We are moving to assist. We have your 6. Jace looked at Lyra. We have a fleet. Before they could run for the hangar, Seraphine stepped forward. The Regent had been silent, watching the tactical display with a hollow expression. She held a data slate in her hand. Lyra, Seraphine said. Lyra stopped. The sisters looked at each other, one a warrior in scavenged armor, the other a queen in silk who had presided over a decade of slaughter. If you survive this, Seraphine said, the consortium will try to say you are illegitimate. They will say I was coerced. They will try to reinstate the regency. Seraphine extended the data slate. This is the final ledger, Seraphine said softly. It contains the recordings of the private council meetings. It shows me agreeing to the exile. It shows me authorizing the initial funding for the false flag attacks. It proves I was not a hostage. Lyra, it proves I was a partner. Lyra stared at the slate. If you release this, you will be tried for war crimes. You will spend the rest of your life in a cell. I know, Seraphine said. She stood straighter, regaining a fragment of the dignity she had sold years ago. I cannot undo the dead, but I can make sure the living believe you. Take it. It is the only way your rule begins with truth. Lyra took the slate. She did not offer forgiveness. It was too soon, and the cost had been too high. But she nodded. Goodbye, Seraphine, Lyra said. Save the sky, sister. Seraphine whispered. The launch was a vertical scream of engines. Jace piloted the heavy-duty shuttle, pushing the thrusters past the safety red line. Lyra sat in the co-pilot seat, strapped in, her eyes closed as she mentally prepared for the resonance she would need to endure. Outside the viewport, the space around the relay had become a firestorm. The automated defense drones, thousands of diamond-shaped killbots controlled by the consortium's last algorithm, swarmed the approaching ships. But the fleet Jace had rallied was meeting them. It was a battle unlike any the galaxy had seen. There was no conquering intent. Vathalen cruisers flew wing to wing with human frigates, their shields overlapping to create protective tunnels for the shuttle. They used ion cannons to disable the drones, EMP bursts to scramble the guidance systems. They were not trying to annihilate, they were trying to hold the line. Shields are down to 40%, Jace shouted over the roar of a near miss. We have a drone swarm on our starboard vector. I see them, Lyra said. She didn't touch the weapons controls. She reached out with her mind. Sensing the energy lattice of the drones, she felt the simple, brutal logic of their programming. She pushed a pulse of dissonance into their sensors. Outside, the squadron of drones veered sharply away, their targeting computers confused by the sudden ghost signal. Nice trick, Jace grunted, banking the shuttle hard to dodge a piece of debris. We are approaching the hangar bay, Lyra said. The magnetic field is erratic. You have to punch it. Punching it, Jace confirmed. He slammed the throttle forward. The shuttle rocketed through the closing blast doors of the relay's maintenance bay, skidding across the deck plating in a shower of sparks before crashing into the safety barrier. The silence that followed was heavy. "Everyone in one piece?" Jace asked, unbuckling his harness. Lyra was already moving. "The core is 3 levels down. I can feel it. It is singing a requiem." They ran through the corridors of the station. The relay was not built for habitation, it was a machine. The walls pulsed with conduits carrying stellar plasma. The air tasted of ozone and burning metal. The gravity shifted unpredictably, forcing them to run on the walls and ceilings as the station's stabilizers failed. They reached the core chamber. It was a cathedral of light. The center of the room was dominated by the singularity lens, a massive spinning ring of containment glass holding a sphere of pure, condensed star stuff. It was blindingly bright, thrashing against the glass, seeking a way out. Standing at the control console was not Kale Soar, but a hologram of him. The real man was likely halfway to the outer rim. "You are too late," the hologram sneered, its image flickering in the radiation interference. "The cascade is irreversible. The galaxy needs a tragedy to learn obedience." Jace shot the hologram projector. The image vanished. "I prefer him quiet," Jace muttered. Lyra walked toward the lens. The heat was intense. Radiating through the glass, her skin began to glow, responding to the proximity of so much stellar energy. "Lyra," Jace said, his voice tight. She turned to him. "I have to go inside." "Inside the containment field?" Jace stared at her. "That is suicide. It will disintegrate you." "The field is failing," Lyra said, pointing to the hairline fractures appearing on the glass. "If I stay out here, it explodes, and if I go in, I can become the conductor. I can channel the excess energy out through the relay array, harmlessly into deep space." "And what happens to you when you channel the power of a sun?" Jace asked, stepping closer. "I do not know," Lyra admitted softly. "But I know what happens to everyone else if I don't." She reached for the maintenance hatch. Jace grabbed her hand. "No," he said. "Jace, please, do not be the guard who stops me. Be the partner who lets me go." "I am not stopping you," Jace said fiercely. "I am coming with you." Lyra shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "You are human. You have no resistance to this energy. You will burn in seconds." "Then you better work fast," Jace said. He looked at her, and his expression was not one of reckless bravado, but of absolute, terrifying clarity. "I am not letting you do this alone. We started this in a cell together. We finish it in the fire together. That is the deal." Lyra looked at him. She saw the stubborn set of his jaw, the fear he was suppressing, and the love that was stronger than his survival instinct. She realized that arguing would only waste time they didn't have. "Together," she whispered. She opened the hatch. They stepped into the light. The sensation was not pain. It was an overload of existence. It felt like inhaling a lightning bolt. The world dissolved into white and violet. There was no floor, no ceiling, only the roar of energy that sounded like a million voices screaming. Lyra floated in the center of the storm. She felt her physical form beginning to fray, her consciousness stretching thin, threatening to dissolve into the plasma. It was seductive. It would be so easy to just let go, to become light, to stop hurting. Then she felt a hand. It was solid. It was warm. It was shaking. Jace was holding on to her. He was screaming, his flight suit smoking, his skin blistering under the assault. But he was holding on. He was the anchor. He was the gravity that kept her from flying apart. He was not a Starlight entity. He was flesh and bone and stubborn refusal to die. and his presence ground her. It reminded her that she was not just a concept or a weapon. She was a woman. She gripped his hand back. She drew on his strength, his defiance. Lyra opened her mouth and screamed, but it was not a scream of pain. It was a command. She pulled the chaotic energy into herself, filtering it through her own resonance, and forced it outward. The exiled Starlight princess awoke in chains, she gasped, the words vibrating through the energy field. She looked at Jace, seeing him through the blinding haze, and learned freedom is a choice we make for each other. She slammed her free hand against the energy lattice. Disperse. The relay obeyed. A massive beam of light shot out from the station, not toward the planet but away from it. It punched a hole through the nebula, a streak of brilliance that illuminated the dark for 1,000 light years. The pressure inside the chamber vanished. The light faded. Lyra and Jace fell. The hospital room was white, quiet, and smelled of antiseptic, a smell Jace Wren had decided was the second best smell in the universe, right after Lyra's hair. He sat in a chair next to the biobed, his arm in a regenerative sling, half his face covered in healing patches. He was reading a physical book, ignoring the data pad buzzing with messages from every news outlet in the quadrant. On the bed, Lyra stirred. Jace dropped the book. He leaned forward. "Hey," he whispered. Lyra blinked. Her violet eyes were clear, though the bioluminescence of her skin was dim, like a moon in eclipse. She looked at Jace, then at the window where the sun was shining, a normal yellow, non-exploding sun. "We are alive," she rasped. "We are," Jace confirmed. "Though the doctors say we are both medically fascinating, apparently, you reorganized my cellular structure slightly. I might glow in the dark now." Lyra smiled, a weak, genuine expression. "You always were a little dim," Jace laughed, flinching as his ribs protested. He reached out and took her hand. "The relay is stable. The fleet stood down. The charter is dissolved." "And Seraphine?" Lyra asked. "In custody," Jace said gently. "She released the ledger. The trial starts next week. She is pleading guilty to everything." Lyra turned her head to look at the ceiling. "It is over." "No," Jace said. "The war is over. The work is just starting." 6 months later. The Reconstruction Council met in the Great Hall, but the room looked different. The throne was gone. In its place was a round table, large enough to seat 20 delegates. Lyra Vathalin sat at the table. She wore simple robes of blue and silver with no armor. To her left sat a Terran labor union leader. To her right, a former separatist engineer. Across from her were representatives from the Aurelian workers who had seized the factories. It was messy. It was loud. They were arguing about trade tariffs and grain distribution. It was the most beautiful thing Lyra had ever heard. She listened as they debated. She didn't dictate. She mediated. She was not a queen commanding subjects. She was a facilitator building a consensus. The doors opened, and Jace Wren walked in. He was not wearing a uniform. He wore a civilian suit, though he still walked with the prowling grace of a soldier. He carried a stack of data slates. "Report on the security reform," Jace announced, placing the slates on the table. "We have dismantled the last of the privateer contracts. The new peacekeeping corps is fully integrated. No profit incentives, no kill bonuses." He looked at Lyra. His expression was professional, but his eyes held a private warmth that made her heart stutter. "And," Jace added, "we have verified the dismantling of the weapon systems on the relay. It is now purely a communications hub." "Thank you." "Counselor Wren," Lyra said, fighting a smile. "Just doing my job." "Madam Chair," Jace replied. Later that evening, They stood on the balcony of the palace, overlooking the city. The lights of the capital were different now. They weren't the harsh searchlights of the occupation or the dim, dying lights of the blackout. They were the warm, chaotic lights of people living their lives. Jace leaned against the railing, holding 2 glasses of wine. He handed one to Lyra. "You know," Jace said, looking at the stars, "they are writing books about us already. I saw one in the market. It had a picture of me on the cover. My chin was significantly more heroic." "I saw one too," Lyra said, sipping her wine. "It said I used magic to tame the savage human guard." "Savage?" Jace scoffed. "I am a delight." He turned to face her. The humor faded, replaced by the quiet, enduring intensity that had kept them alive in the dark. "Are you happy?" Jace asked. Lyra looked at the city. She thought about Seraphine in her cell, writing memoirs. She thought about the arguments in the council room. She thought about the nightmares she still had of the prison chain. "I am free," Lyra said, "and I am tired, and I have a lot of work to do." She looked at Jace. She reached out and touched the faint scar on his cheek, a souvenir from the relay. "But I am not alone," she said. "Never," Jace promised. He leaned in, and he kissed her. It wasn't the desperate kiss of the airlock or the defiant kiss of the archive. It was a slow, steady kiss, a kiss that had nowhere else to be, a kiss that knew there was a tomorrow, and the day after that. "Institutions can be redesigned," Lyra whispered, pulling back just enough to look him in the eye. "Identities can be reclaimed." "And love," Jace finished, resting his forehead against hers, "is strongest when it refuses to be a tool of propaganda." "Is that a quote from your book?" Lyra teased. "No," Jace said, smiling against her lips. "That's just something I learned from a girl who woke up in chains." Above them, the Starlight relay pulsed, not with the fire of a weapon, but with the steady rhythmic beat of a lighthouse, guiding ships home through the dark.